My name is Anna, and I've lived at Twin Oaks in the past, and I was here the day of the fire. The day of the fire, I was pruning plums in front of Tupelo. There's two big plums there. I think around 3:30, I looked up at the sky and I started noticing that the clouds were moving like super fast, like unnaturally fast. And it was a very windy day, probably one of the windiest days I've ever seen here, but it still kind of looked strange.
So on the afternoon of the fire was my first meeting as a planner, and it was quite ironic in which there wasn't a lot to talk about. There were some things to catch up on, it's very easygoing and lighthearted. And then when I walked out of there and headed back to Kauai, where I live, there was some smoke in the air.
Not too much later, I started noticing clouds of smoke drifting through the forest towards, like, looking towards EC. And at first, I was just like, oh, I guess some neighbors making a fire or something, and just the wind is blowing it over. In the course of a couple minutes, it was just really like thick clouds of smoke moving through the forest. And I said to Michael and Shay, who was sitting on the porch, it's like, oh, it looks like there's a fire. Maybe it's on our property, but we were just guessing at that time.
And like my entire experience of this was like colored by the fire we had back in September, where like we raised the alarm and gathered everybody together, and it was all like, what do we do? What do we do? And then we ended up just like eating in ZK that night, and everything was normal. And so I was like, is this just going to be the same thing? Like, how worried do I get about this? And I was like, well, it's a lot windier today than it was last time, I guess. I guess we should take this seriously. Yeah.
My name is Will. I've been guesting a number of times at Twin Oaks over the years. I was there on the day of the fire. I was working. It was a normal day. I remember I had a bit of a headache. I was feeling a bit sick that day, but I wanted to try and get some hours. So I went up to EC at about 3:30 p.m. I'd opened one of the big garage doors and was just had my headphones on, was using the sander. It was quite noisy in there. I'd noticed out of the corner of my eye through the garage door that what appeared to me the weather had started to change. Lots of clouds seemed to be coming over, and there was like an orange hue in the sky. So I remember thinking it was odd because it was far before sunset was meant to be. I look outside and then it appears that there's some sort of fire in the distance. Right then I checked my phone and I had a call from a friend, and they said that the fire department had been called like 20 minutes, 30 minutes ago, and they're going to come sort it out and just to get out of there. As I left to go back down to Tupelo, I could see the fire raging, like not too far away, maybe about 50 feet away perhaps. I couldn't really tell the direction of it, but from the way the wind was blowing, it kind of dawned on me then, this could actually be something far more serious.
And then one of my friends came running down from EC and said that there was a fire that was already on our property, and he had pictures and everything, and he said that he ran down because he could feel the heat of the fire. And I think in that moment I was like, okay, this is pretty serious, and started treating it that way more.
So my first realization of there being a fire was the internet cut out. I learned later that the internet cut out because the router at EC that was connected to the service provider had burned down. So internet went out. I walked out of my room. I saw, I think, Ecole coming downstairs, and I asked her, is the internet not working for you? And she said, there's a fire.
I was filing papers, putting them away, and just like listening to music. Looked at my phone, checked my email, saw the email about the fire, and I was like, holy shit. And I live at Tupelo, so I immediately started going up the hill to Tupelo because I didn't have anything with me besides a little purse. And it was like I couldn't see fire, but I could hear the sound. As I was walking away with my stuff, the firefighters came running up, like yelling, everybody get out.
And a member of the fire department to pick up a guy I talked to earlier, he drove past me. There's about 15 of us outside of MT. And he says, like, who's in charge here to me? And I just said, a lot of people.
I was in my home at Neshoba when Flinch came running down the hallway and said, fire. And I was making a peanut butter jelly toast. And I put that down on the counter and I ran to my room and I got all of my medicine and a few pieces of clothing that I could stuff in my backpack and left.
Panic doesn't feel like the right word, but like, yeah, that I don't know what's going on, and there were so many unknowns that I was freaking out about. I recall being glad that I was at least spending it with a bunch of my friends from Twin Oaks.
We all gathered in the courtyard, and not much later we're told that we had to evacuate to the river field on the other side of the road, but it still didn't seem too serious, and I think people were together at that point, so the tension was a little bit less.
And at some point, as we got evacuated across the road, and people were just hanging out in the field there, a couple of us were like, "Yeah, we're going to be hungry soon," and so I and Kelpie were designated to go get like a huge stack of pizzas. So when we were there getting a huge stack of pizzas, we saw somebody else getting pizzas because they were getting evacuated. So we got a chance to talk to one of our neighbors, like in town, about what was going on. And came back, and again, like we got a bunch of chips and things like that. Like everybody's like pizzas, everybody's celebrating.
Yeah, right after that, the police told us to evacuate the property, and I feel like for me that was the moment where kind of the panic set in, because it was about splitting us up. Before that we had been in a group and we were all just like hanging out really.
So there was a while of people like figuring out who was going to go where, and Catherine was there with a clipboard the whole time. She was like taking roll call, she was making sure everybody was accounted for, which was amazing.
Calls were coming in from people saying, you can come here, you can come there, right? And so that's when Keith's call came in and said, Keith came and issued a general invitation to all the Twin Oaks kids. You can come there, which was great because Linus in particular was like, what do we do? I think we should leave. And I wasn't prepared yet to leave, right? Like I knew that I wasn't going to leave until everybody else was gone, right? So it was just really great when the call went out. All the kids can just come over to Keith's house. They'll play video games. They'll have a good time. And they crammed in a car. And then it was like, great, I don't have to worry about my kids or most of the other kids until this is done, right? Whatever that looks like. But right, people got in cars and they drove away to places. And I had this like chicken scratch list of where everybody was. At the end of it all, there were still like 8 of us that got in the school bus. The county sent 2 school buses and we only needed 1. And got a ride out to the middle school where they were very welcoming and they had lots of space and tons of food. And I felt kind of bad for not just sending the whole community there so they could really feel like they were they were doing something. Instead, they just got like 8 of us and most of us were getting rides somewhere else. Just using that as a place to get picked up.
The day we all evacuated, we told the firefighters they had to, come to Tupelo if possible to get car seats and like meds and stuff, and they okayed that. It's getting darker. We're driving up to Tupelo up this direction, and I remember Jason saying, "Do not park up there. Like the fire's too close." So we like parked in Neshoba, and I'm like running up this side path, just watching this fire burning. Yeah, just like not really being able to breathe because of the smoke, and like just like the panic is setting in, and yeah, it was really intense.
So I ended up going over to Acorn, and we kind of entered this time vacuum of all of us just hanging out in the steel building and waiting for there to be news.
One car comes, 2, 3, the night bus comes, and at this point my partner has arrived, so I go with them, trusting that anyone else who arrives will find their way to the steel building. We go up to the steel building. Acorners had brought some food, water, there's blankets, there's music, there's a pool table. I mean, someone from the outside could be looking at this and saying, oh wow, this is a nice party everyone's having. But inside, every single person is, from my perspective, every single person was highly disassociated or terrified or trying so hard to do anything but think about what has happened or talk about it. There wasn't talking about it.
Mostly people stayed over in the upstairs steel building. I brought some snacks and some teas. My main feelings were of relief that it seemed pretty clear that all the people were safe.
I think at around 11:30 p.m., Rain came in and told us that we could go back to the property. I think we all just felt really relieved at that time and filled up night bus and pretty much got out of there.
So I did not have any big emotions until that night when they told us we could return to our homes. Like, they evacuated everybody, and at like 1 a.m. said it was safe to return. But we came back to Kauai and could see fire in the woods. And so Kelpie was like, I'm not sleeping with fire in the woods. And so we went out with shovels and were putting fire out in the woods and met other Twin Oakers who were out in the woods putting fires out.
We got a message that EC had burned and that Edmund had laid eyes on it. I was still hoping that it would be on the lighter end of what a person could refer to as having burned, and that maybe some of the stuff inside it would still be fine, and that maybe some of the structure would still be salvageable, like the structure of the Acorn Steel Building was used and was still very much the same shape for years after the steel building fire.
So I went to my room and I checked my emails, and I saw the email that said that the EC had burnt down entirely, and so did the conference site and the sawmill and just pretty much everything up there. And I didn't think that I could just go to sleep after that. And there was another email from Kelpie, I think, that said that there were still active fires around Tupelo that people were putting out, so I decided to go up there. Even before we actually got to Tupelo, somewhere between Neshoba and Tupelo, I realized that the soil beneath my feet suddenly became like extra crunchy, and I looked down and I was already walking on like an ash field.
My partner and I decided to go look at EC before we got the messages of, there's toxic stuff in the air, like you're gonna be breathing that in, don't go up there. That's the worst thing you can do right now. A tree might fall on you. You might step on metal. We go up there, we had a message to fight some fires. We decided in our state of being activated and disassociated that we didn't have time to go get shovels. So we go up there empty-handed. I brought a broom with me.
Whoa.
Is that EC?
That's EC.
Oh my god.
And we got up to EC, and we just stood in front of the inferno. And you had to stand 10, 15 feet away from it because it's too hot. And I'm standing there holding my broom, and I almost start laughing just at how ridiculous the entire situation was. Ridiculous because it was terrifying. Ridiculous because there was nothing we could do about it. Ridiculous because the firefighters come up to us and say, there's not enough water in Louisa County to put this out.
don't think that I was afraid once we had returned to the property. It was just more the sense of almost awe that was going on inside of me, of just like, what is going on? How can I understand this? You know, you just walk up there and your brain expects there to be the structure that you know is there, and it just isn't there anymore at all.
How can this be? How can this be? How can this be? The whole, oh my god, the whole roof collapsed.
It was a disaster, and at the same time it was kind of beautiful to watch, like the fire and the inferno and all the metals just like melting into each other.
I think the next day we were all able to come back, and my peanut butter jelly toast was still on the counter, and I ate it.
The next day, I got up early and went up to EC, which was still flames and smoldering. And that was just heartbreaking to see the devastation and just walking through like that burned hellscape just to get to EC and then see like, oh, it's not just EC. The sawmill is gone, the kiln is gone, the hoop house is gone, the other kiln is gone, all the conference site is gone, the pavilion, the kitchen. It was just like, it was emotionally devastating.
This entire time, the tears had been held back. And then it was right when we started planning our first community meeting, and there was 10 minutes before I was going to be speaking in front of the entire community about this, that I just started weeping into my co-planner's arms for quite a bit of time. And at that point, the tears, they didn't really stop for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I don't think it really like sunk in for a while. Like I think it took a few days to really hit, and then it was a pretty heavy hit.
What do we see behind you?
Oh God. You see how close the fire got to Tupelo? Yeah.
We came home on Thursday morning, and when I walked up to Tupelo, that was when I was like, oh shit, because you walk up there and like you can see where everything was burned, like 4 feet from the building, super close to the chair porch, like on 3 sides of the building basically. If you look out the windows, you can see where there was burning. Yeah, like that first day back was when everything hit me, and I was like, oh my God, my house almost burned down. Our warehouse is gone, our business is gone. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of inventory and irreplaceable machines. It's a lot to take in.
So this was a whole building. There were sinks, we had an oven, and now it's just the concrete pad. You can obviously see the charred remains of a bunch of wood, so it was full on blaze up here. Anything that you see that is standing was not here before for the most part. We have a forestry department here at Twin Oaks. So we take down a lot of the trees ourselves, and then we process that wood. We put it through the mill. We had a kiln to dry things to get them to the right consistency or texture. As you can see, that's all gone. That was not here. The original, I believe, burned down, and we rebuilt this one. Louisa Fire Department dug a suppression trench a fire break line, I think they called it. And the idea is to get in there deep enough and pull out all like flammable material, so it's just dirt, so the fire like comes to that point, there's nothing for it to spread to, so it just stops. And that was a huge help. Probably saved us from a lot of destruction. Where the line was, we probably could have lost a couple more of the residential buildings had that line not been dug there. This is Oz, and this building is still standing and looks perfect. Apparently, and it was years before I came here, there was a fire here. They lost the building, and they're like, all right, we're going to rebuild this building, and we're going to make it so fire will not affect it. We fucking did it, because look at it. That thing is immaculate still. We built the kitchen on it. That's really cool. But if you look over here at Emerald City, not so lucky. You can still see some of the equipment that we had for hammocks. Like this stuff, to my knowledge, is pre-World War II, maybe even pre-World War I. You can still see pieces of glass and stuff like that, framed from that, but like the interior is completely melted. There were 3, 4, 5 maybe other provisional member cars up here, all covered by their insurance. So their insurance came out, towed the wreckage out of there. They were able to get checks. This whatever coverage they had, insurance told them that they weren't qualified. I believe as a community, we paid out of community funds to make sure that got their money for their car. This is one of 6 or 7 residential buildings that we have. This is one of the larger ones that we have, and it's home to families. The fire actually made it all the way to basically right here. Right, this was all gone. This was black and charred and done. I am 100% confident that the only reason that this building is still standing is because of the communards that came over here, hooked up to the fire suppression system, put hoses, and kept the fire at bay.
The day after the fire, someone asked me, if I could think of any things that seemed like lessons from having had experienced fires before. And nothing came to mind at that point. But thinking about it in the following day or so, what occurred to me is, remember that you're grateful that your house is still a house and that all the people are alive. Because I think that gratitude or the awareness of it can easily fade faster than the grief and possibly anger related to the destruction.
This is my third large community fire. I think one thing that ends up happening is it is really difficult and frustrating, and it takes a long time to kind of recover, but often good things come from it. At Acorn, their steel building burned down and we got this new beautiful steel building. Then Heartwood, was kind of a mess, and the kitchen was the biggest part that burned, and we got nicer countertops and got to get things organized like we wanted to, and we would not have done that had it not obviously been on fire. Or it might have taken a lot more convincing of people to make the changes that needed to happen.
I feel like Twin Oaks really shines in a crisis, and community in general really shines in a crisis. And I like the way this is pulling us out of our shells and bringing us into engaging each other even when things feel difficult.
I find myself to be so much more kind and forgiving to myself and other co's right now, especially after the fire and still, because there's a sense of not only EC burning away, but also the things that normally bother us not mattering as much. Those things burn away. The weeds in my mind, the community's minds burn away as we focus in on what really matters. How can we really support ourselves in the community right now? And I think this could be a good thing.
When I got to Twin Oaks, a lot of people were just like really feeling stuck, feeling like Twin Oaks wasn't going anywhere, it wasn't moving towards anything. The buildings were all like decaying and moldy, and like, you know, with the mold remediations and stuff happening, it feels like people are feeling more hopeful and like things are improving a little bit. And I think having this kind of like unknown future is also something to kind of give people hope. Like, okay, like it seemed like the hammocks business wasn't really, it was making us money, but it wasn't like really serving us.
We did need to change some of our business practices. We did need to generate new areas for getting income to sustain our lifestyles here. And because of the fire, really got the ball rolling on that stuff. We had this whole process, this Comic-Con thing. People got to propose ideas and come in. The community voted on them. One of them that really looked promising was a pottery business. So we're in basically the embryonic stages of that business, but I could see that growing into something cool.
I also really appreciate the wider community response. I think Twin Oakers, we often kind of think of ourselves as something separate from the rest of the people in our neighborhood and in the county, and like that we kind of hold ourselves apart partially out of caution because we don't know how people view us, right? And we don't want to ruffle feathers. And so I think the fact that this has like got more of us talking with more people in the area, it's like got me feeling particular more like, oh no, they think of us as one of theirs, right? Like we're part of this community, part of the broader Louisa County community. We're not just some weirdos who have to look after ourselves. Like, yeah.
Yeah, so since the fire, we just cleared out all of the warehouse, all of the debris a few months ago. The actual removal process was pretty easy. It just took a few days using some hired professionals, and it's completely cleared now. Luckily, the Louisa local community has been really helpful. The dump allowed us to do a lot more dumping there for free. On that far slab over there, we're gonna build another panel warehouse, and this slab that I'm sitting on right now is just gonna remain empty until we need expansion. The pottery business right now is trying to move into Oz, that green building, and then once the replacement warehouse built on that back slab is built, they'll be able to really expand and ramp up production, is at least the plan. Yeah, I think that there was definitely a few month long mourning process around the hammocks business, and a lot of people have just like a lot of history with this place and have spent many hours working up here, and not just working but also having fun. Since then, I feel like there has been a lot of hope. A new change of direction is definitely necessary, and it's not done in such a begrudging way, but in a really hopeful and excited way, I think, which can be difficult with change. So I'm feeling pretty good about it.